Go ahead, Bri.
I mean, you said take us home, and I'm looking at you. You're in the car. You're good to go. If anyone's more qualified to take us home right now.
And I have to say, your view for everyone is quite beautiful.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, I'm moving to Canada.
So there's different levels of
beautiful
what I would consider to be signs of improvement. Tim brought up an example that I didn't even know from our office. So thanks, Tim, for sharing. I've recently had a situation where kid is young, he's 7 years old. He's actually been with us on and off for about a year. We made the switch to online. And again, I think some of the having the games online, like Galaxy Trucker, Takedo, things like that, that it's easier to kind of like grok as you go. And then the mom is like, oh yeah, and now he's teaching his younger brother and his older sister how to play games. And I was like, what? Okay, yeah, that's exactly what we want. We do want like we are like diplomats and ambassadors of gaming, right? And so if our kids are doing the same thing, that's great. For me, one of the other areas that I would say are signs of improvement is if the parents are getting involved. I know we talked about different games and different systems earlier, and I believe in the chat I said it was like, oh, what's a good game? The one that they're willing to play, but also the one that the parents are willing to play with them. Because when the whole family is invested in the activity, then it's an activity that's going to they're going to keep doing. Another example I would give are like smaller examples, which would be signs of improvement for me is they have stopped some of their OCD behaviors while they're doing something else. And working in the home, working with families, it's like I am looking for that one moment where the behavior that is disrupting their life stops. And if I can get that to happen once and then learn why that happened and repeat it, then we could extend the benefits. So in any situation where I see that, I would consider that a benefit. I mean, you're also talking like I worked with a kid by himself for almost 5 years, and his sentence structure changed. It's something we would take for granted, but like just changing one word in the sentence, and then on top of that, seeing that he was able to do that in group, which years ago I would never have imagined there even being a group for this child. So I mean, just in some of our cases, just getting the child through the door is the improvement, and willing to sit down for more than 5 or 10 minutes is the improvement.
Yeah, and even the skill level the person has from one point to another, like at one point, you know, their rallying speech based on their level of expression and whatever might be like, come on guys, we really gotta do the right thing here, so come on, let's take over the castle, yay. I mean, it doesn't have to be like a Newt Rockney or like, he puts on the silver helmet and he's walking in front of the patent flag. Like, it doesn't need to be all complicated. And I also apologize that I make references that are like 30 to 40 years ago for the younger folk in the audience. Just throwing that out there. People are like, what the hell's patent? Listen, Rama, you magnificent. Never mind. The point
that joke was for me and Jack, right?
No, we had a laugh here in the middle. I love it. But it's all about being attentive. And one of the big things about gaming therapy in general that I often caution people about is, and even if you're doing it from the parent perspective, so it's a developmental use of gaming in the house, it may not be like quote unquote clinical, but still beneficial. Always remember that if we're doing this with intentionality, whether you're an educator or a clinician, remember it's very easy to slide into fun town. because there's a lot of rooms in that hotel. So it's very hard, like even running an RPG session or running a game session, to try to remember being attentive to those milestones, being attentive to those benchmarks. I mean, that's another reason that we always recommend the 2 facilitator model if you can. So you have one person that kind of runs the game, and you got another person who's, kind of clinical creeper, you're kind of sitting in the back like, okay, so wow, that's interesting. We had one kid at our monthly board game event that very nice, Brian. The sunglasses really sell it. But one kid that, every week when he came to group initially, this board game group, he brought his Uno Attack set with him. And that was his jam. Like, that was his game. And he got really upset after 2 weeks where he was like, no one wants to play. This group is stupid. No one wants to play Uno Attack. And we kind of sat around and say, well, maybe no one likes Uno Attack the way you do. Maybe they're afraid you're going to beat them. So maybe they don't want to take on the master. How about next week we try, are there people here you don't know that maybe you could ask to play Uno Attack? Maybe ask some of the facilitators to play. And then maybe next week we can try a different game. And then I pulled Mom aside and I said, here's some benchmark goals that I don't want to be over the head, with your son about, but here's just some things for you to consider. We're maybe trying to get him to try a unique activity. So maybe that next time, it might take us 2 months until he tries a brand new game other than Uno Attack, but that's a benchmark. And you can only be attentive to that if you're aware of where they are through that process and you're really reflecting. It's another big thing. Someone said something earlier about how we validate this to other professionals or whatnot. It's about showing measurable, achievable, observable result. We have to show that it's making change the best way that we can measure it, whether that's through research, whether that's through documentation, whether that's through panels and discussions. And the biggest thing overall is sharing ideas as professionals. None of us in this approach are experts by any stretch of the imagination. We are all learning. That is even, me having run these groups for like 5-6 years, I am learning something new every dang day about this process. And if we don't share these learned experiences and these pitfalls and these powers and all this stuff that we're talking about, if we don't share them with each other, the toys are going to get broken because folks are going to go off script with it and we need standards and practices, and we need shared expertise to truthfully help propel this as a serious adjunct modality. So I'm sorry, there's my soapbox and I'm standing to it.
Talking to you about like the 2 model facilitator, that's something that we use as well, especially for RPGs. Usually I'll be the one running the game, but one of the things that we do differently is Brian is usually also a player and more like a guide to be guiding them through situations in the game or behaviors happening at the table, and it's not disrupting the flow of the game itself.
Yeah, well, what is it? The Jiminy Cricket or the Lampwick, if you know your Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Jiminy Cricket is like, come on, Pinocchio, I don't think you should do that. Meanwhile, Lampwick's like, hey, come on, what are you so afraid of? Go ahead, yeah, go into the cave.
Oh, geez, Rick, I don't know if we should do this. I'm tired, Rick.
Yeah, you'll be fine, Marty. It's whatever.
It's okay.
So I think some of that comes from what is the thing, and this is something also to keep in mind. What is the therapist comfortable with in session doing, right? Yeah. So for me personally, we talked about chess a lot. I started off like, okay, let's play this out. And then when I play chess, I can kind of remember board positioning really well. Okay, let's go back and see how that could have been done differently. I don't think I could do that as a GM all the time, depending on the type of game. So there's times where I'm like, I'm just going to be an assistant. I'm just going to help out. But also because of the way things are structured in New Jersey with how we use in-home and intensive in-home, intensive in-community, we have something that's called a behavioral assistant or a support and service support. And so what I would do is I would be more reliant on, hey, you guys are in charge of looking at what the behaviors look like and how and keeping track of those. I'm going to look at symptoms and how to really address where they're coming from, which is different. Like trying to find doing the clinical assessment, finding what modality might work best in this situation, and really being able to divide the workload with a co-facilitator.
Yeah.
Are there any questions? I know there's some questions that we may have missed. Are there any questions that you guys have for us? I know we're running a little over our time, but I know there's a lot of questions about documentation and stuff. I know Brian and Jackie have been kind of talking on that through the chat, but what are ways that you guys are documenting like the progress within your clients?
One of the standards we use, either the DAP or SOAP, whichever format you're more familiar with, data assessment plan, the most basic clinical note, known to mankind. And basically, like, we just kind of state what's going on in the group. But we actually do a lot of front loading with our process, that we have a therapeutic narrative arc worksheet that we utilize, where we put the goals of the client in, the first area of the grid. So we map out, are they looking to, and we try to get as specific as we can, to be more comfortable in new surroundings, or to, be okay talking about myself or my feelings. We try to make it more of an observable, operational goal specifically for the benefit of the client. Then what we do is we kind of map this, and we go, okay, two different ways to map it. One, what are ways I can replicate that in the context of a game? What games are out there that help rehearse or represent this skill that I'm trying to develop at this person or this behavior? Then we build in story elements, like who'd be a good enemy or a good foil for this person? Who would be a good buddy for this person to kind of help encourage that behavior along? What story beats, what world can we design to make this? So again, it's all about creating the narrative. Then, a secondary level is we look at how we can economize. I mean, let's be honest, in 2 hours, I ain't gonna be able to tell everybody's story in that amount of time. Sometimes you're gonna miss a little bit of Black Widow's backstory just because you only have 2 hours or 2.5 to tell it. So we try to economize by saying, what similar shared goals are there? Well, now we have mini quests. Now we have, little buddy team ups. So we actually can partner clients based on similar goals. So now we have peer-based learning as well. So a lot of it is pre-planning, so we know what we want to hit. In the middle of the process, it's trying to keep it honest, where, we have a debriefing of our own after every clinical session that we run, to go, okay, who was in it? Who wasn't in it? What did we talk about? Were we too distracted on the game that we weren't focused on the player or the client? So we do a lot of checking in during this process, because again, it's very easy to get lost in a great story, especially if you have a good group of characters and involved role players. And if you forget that for too long, you are sliding down a road of 3 sessions and you've worked on nothing. Yeah. And that's dangerous, because then the process can slide away from you. Yeah. So it's really about keeping on top of it. So I would say awareness, honesty, humility, creativity, and bravery. But most of all, humility, because this is a new thing we're doing. So there's a lot that we have to learn about how we do it.
Yes.
Mike, I want to jump in on the encouraging parents, but I'll wait.
That was going to be my next thing to bring up is ways to help and encourage parents. So go ahead.
Shawn, wait, because I think there might be some differences in how the assessments are. Shawn, is there any way that you assess?
Not in the context that I've been working in schools. Really, most, I think, educational systems really don't know yet how to slot in what we do into pedagogy. So assessment is more secondary. They're sort of evaluating how the students are engaging in scholastically outside of what we're doing, and that's fine for now. But you guys are inspiring me. Perhaps this year I'll take it on myself to initiate some kind of self-evaluatory, build up a database, and take it to the admins and the office heads with data, and we'll see what happens.
I put in the chat, actually, I know we want to get to that other question, because I'm very excited about that too. I put in the chat a list of the Autplay assessments. and inventories that are taken. For the most part, that's information that's provided to us either through the parent or the child. And the Autplay assessments go from, I think, 3 or 4 up until 18, but also bear in mind cognitive level. So you would still, if you feel that this person's 20, but their cognitive level is still 15, I would use the adolescent. I would still use the adolescent assessment. The way we have things set up in New Jersey, because of our contracts with the state, we have to reassess every 60 days. So we have to update the treatment plan, especially in the in-home field, every 60 days. So you're constantly reevaluating goals. How close are you to your goal? Was that goal completed? Does that complete your overall goal, or was that just a short-term goal to get us to the longer ones? Another thing I would say in regards to any assessments or inventories, you can use them to keep track of what you're doing. I have used the Autplay assessment as we're doing an assessment at the beginning, and then we reassess in like 6 months. We've done it that way as a reassessment tool as well, to see if there's any changes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know Janice is asking a question about like specific measures or data. I mean, it really depends on, I mean, there's a measure for everything that's out there. I mean, there's, social skills inventory, there's the SPIN social phobia index, there's group satisfaction surveys, and a lot of that stuff, you could even create your own self measure that may not necessarily be as scientific, but it could maybe say, what skills are you working on communicating? I'm comfortable talking to other people. I'm not comfortable. I'm comfortable talking to people I know. Create your own Likert. And
Yeah.
I guarantee there's tons of stuff out there. The important part about data, at least from a starting off point, is if you use a measure at the beginning and you use the same measure consistently throughout, it shows an even internal validity. See, look, Brian, I'm learning research talk because of this project we're doing. But yeah, look at me getting all big. But it shows internal consistency and validity to the measure. So you're still showing measured change. So like you could ask a parent, how would you rate your child in these following behaviors, and pick what your group's targeting, and then give that scale. And then at the end of like a 3-week, or maybe like if you're running it for 6 months, run a survey every month, run a survey every 3 months, and then at the 6-month mark. So as long as you're able to show a graph, again, it's not necessarily but that's how all tools start. They don't all start being gift wrapped with scientific validity, attached to them. We sometimes have to, we have to bring our own cart to the horse, or whatever. I'm mixing my analogies, but you get the point. Look at what you're trying to measure. And even something as simple for like a club, which is what I'm assuming you were talking about from your thing, show attendance records, show records of how many kids play new games, show things about how many kids then start to play games independently. These are all observable measures that show that gaming is at least of interest to them. So if you show at the beginning of the year, we had 4 kids, and man, if it was at least a little bit of moisture, they didn't show up. But man, by the end of the year, we had like 30 kids there every week who were early. That's going to show them there's at least a level of interest, which may even prompt the second portion of what it is that you're trying to do, which is then, can we measure some of this to talk about, other things? So there's a way to gear and even kickstart that process. Because research doesn't mean anything. It means that we ask more questions, especially at this infancy, I would say.
Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. So how do you get parents involved? So I'm a parent. I was a computer programmer for 13 years, software engineer, making a nice chunk of money. I came up in the .com boom. Worked job 8 months. Hey, you want a 20% raise to come over here? Yes, I do. And I gave that all up after working with my son for years. He's 22 now. He's diagnosed with autism in, the summer of 2001. And the developmental pediatrician, Neil Simon, not the dude from Broadway, said he's going to have lifelong limitations. And I said, well, I'll never dunk a basketball. What are we talking about? And he said, I don't know. So my introduction to this was pathology and fear and doubt. And why I am such a zealous floor time proponent is the first appointment we had with a floor time psychologist. They said, I can't tell you what your son's going to do, but I can't tell you what he's not going to do either. And that shift from pathology to potential was literally life-changing. I went back to school, changed careers. I've been a therapist for 11, 12 years now. And what was it that made the difference? Affect, feeling, connecting. You know, when the therapist showed me that this is what this means when your son is doing this. And I understood that. And then I could communicate and relate with him on a deeper level. Man, I was all in. And, you know, but the group we had this week at the beginning, 3, 8 to 10-year-olds, all on the spectrum, you know, kind of all fighting for control. For me, everything is praxis. Praxis is, can you predict the future? Do you know what's going to happen? Do you have a plan for it? And that's a big issue with autism, not knowing what's going to come. And so then that's what happens with the meltdowns. It's like, I can't predict this because I'm missing cues, or for whatever reason, you know, I had this rigid view, rigid understanding. So we had these kids bickering at the beginning of the week. Today, 5 days, only 5 days, 3 hours a day. And the kids are all exchanging phone numbers. They're like, I want to be able to contact you. I want to get together again.
Yeah.
That's how you get parents hooked, when they see that my kid has friends now. He's interested in other people. He's interested in other things. I can connect and relate to him now. Focus on those strengths. Get the parents in the game too.
Absolutely. That's a big way to do it.
Yep.
Is
And
if you have the opportunity to involve the parents in a game, that is the absolute best way.
Yep.
One
Jack,
of the
you guys are working on a system, right? Is that too early to go?
Yeah, no, it is okay to start talking about it.
Oh,
We do have
Mike,
it up
you
on
ruined
Places.
it.
oh no, it's a surprise. It's coming.
We are
Oh,
working
no.
on Animals and Adventures with 9th level games. We're working on a game that can be used therapeutically, as well as being used by parents as well, and
Yep.
educators, geared towards younger kids. And we are working on something where we can involve nonverbal kids as well. So within the game. So we're excited about that. You can check it out on there. We should be having something up on 9thlevelgames.com.
Yeah, there's
Start
something
seeing
there
some
right
of the
now
stuff there.
for upcoming.
Yep.
Yeah. And so for parents, I wouldn't even focus on skills or goals or here's what you need to do, parents. Have fun with your kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the big things that I will ask is, what does your kid do for fun? What does your family do for fun? And that is part of my intake, because I want to know what you all like together. Because what you all like together is to go out and go for a walk, just sitting down in front of a board may not be it, but walking and talking and playing Spot It as you go might be.
Yeah. We've even used RPG as an intake. I don't know if I mentioned in this panel, but my favorite role-playing system of all time is the one I originally learned how to RP on seriously, which is the Ghostbusters role-playing game. It takes you 5-10 minutes to make a character. It was published in '86. You can only find it on like eBay now. But so the mom was like, "Well, I don't really understand all." What's that?
You can download PDF for free.
Oh yeah, the PDF. Yeah, I had to have an original Ghost Eye because I'm a big spoiled adult baby who lost all his kid toys, so I have to buy them back now. But mom was like, "So I don't get this whole like what exactly is therapy to the process?" I said, "Look, I'll take you through a real simple one-shot adventure. It's the intro adventure that's in the book. It'll take us maybe an hour and a half or so. We'll make characters. Then afterwards, we'll just chat. We'll just talk about what did you enjoy it? What went on?" And then after we had the initial conversation of, well, he really seemed to be enjoying it. I said, well, here's a couple points I want to point out to you, Mom. Here's some things that I noticed as a clinician during the process. And I was like, but first, what did you notice? she's like, well, he was really animated. He was really into it. He really seemed to be having fun. I said, okay, so you've already told me that you've already seen him kind of extend himself beyond normal. I say the game allows that framework for all these other things to take root, and this is the same young man who, I talked about earlier, who, ran his own session and learned so much about reflective listening and all that stuff. So, his trajectory through this has been remarkable. And getting the parent on board was, it's one of these things where they say show, don't tell. And I think that has just as much bearing on this. A lot of times when we do presentations for, we have a presentation called Boards of Education, Gaming in the Classroom. And we talk about board games, but when we talk about them, we bring them and we say, we're going to need 3 hours of your time. 1 hour, I'm going to talk to you. 2 hours, we're playing. And they're like, what? What do you mean? We just need the information. I said, you don't understand. The game is the information. If you don't play the game, you're not going to grok what I'm saying. So we play, then we reflect, and that experience, because then people are connected. It's adult learning. They connect it to their own relevant experience. So give them a relevant experience. That will, so if it's a school environment, host a game day. Get your teacher nerds to bring their board games to the gymnasium and set them up for people to play, and you will be astounded how many people go, I'll help run that club. I could do that. Really, it's okay to do this now? Like, I can admit my nerd. It's totally good. So that's a big power. Don't be afraid to sell the fun, because without the fun, the learning doesn't happen.
Two of the things we like to do is we have an open day for our office for the community to come in and play games with their kids. We'll help run the games, we'll teach the games. But also one of the things that we like to do is for International Tabletop Day, we'll go to a local library and we'll bring a bunch of games and just introduce the rest of the community to that too. Marsha's iPad. You had your hand up for a while. Is there a question that you wanted to ask? I don't know if they're still here.
Marsha's iPad is still here, but she's muted.
Okay. We'll come back to that.
Is it okay, guys, if I do a quick plug for October?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that cool? The Bodhana Group runs its annual fundraiser, Save Against Fear, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, over the weekend of October 9th through the 11th. Due to our current situation of the COVID pandemic, we are running Save Against Fear online this year. We are going to run, a lot of different therapist-led panels. I know Tim and Brian, I know Mike, like they've all run, sessions that are kind of geared towards teaching games and teaching therapeutic nature of games. So, that's one thing is absolutely, is going to be a good time as especially finding out more ways to do this and more games to bring into your practice. Talk to designers, Doug Lewandowski has been there for 2 years. One of the halves of Kids on Bikes, who also did Kids on Brooms most recently. So now it's your Harry Potter Wizarding School role playing, which is phenomenal. So
I would say, as far as getting parents involved, don't be afraid to use gateway games. Like, gateway games are gateway games for a reason, right? Like
Ticket to Ride, Splendor.
Even the junior versions of those games. I'm doing really good with Junior Ticket to Ride and Junior Settlers of Catan, and as a good entryway, because you don't want something that is so overwhelming to set up that they can't imagine doing it themselves. So Suro has been good, Quirkle has been good. I would, if you want to try to like hook parents in, I would recommend Flux. And this is how you sell it. Your children are having some issues here and there following directions or listening to rules, right? Well, the rules are constantly changing in this, and unless you do listen, you're not going to be able to do it. And Mad Cow is another example of that, or Cow. It goes by Cow or Mad Cow. And essentially what it is one person's the president and they set the rules, and you're trying to follow those rules and help and become, the president yourself. The evil cow dictatorship is being passed along. And I have had some success with that in the home.
One thing that I like to try to
So
do sometimes.
you can also
Hello?
Hello.
There's a brief unmute.
Uh,
Perimeter secure, sir. Please continue. Proceed.
One of the things that I like to do is taking the idea of a game and twisting it. So take Sorrow, for example. It's a game about trying to stay on the board, right? Trying to not knock yourself off or run into anyone else. But what if we change the idea of what that game does and make it about either telling the story of two people meeting and how they go about trying to meet each other and why they're trying to meet each other, or why they don't want to meet each other. I think it's always really interesting to play with mechanics and try to turn them into a storytelling game. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Somebody mentioned Munchkin. I'm having trouble typing. I was going to say Munchkin is either an amazing game or it destroys relationships.
Oh yeah,
Mileage may
I
vary.
have my own thing about that game.
But then you're a therapist and you can help rebuild them. It works perfectly for you. It keeps you in the job.
Oh,
You're good.
I'm not scared. I'm just saying, if you're
So today's
know
group's
what you're
on
doing.
anger management and frustration tolerance. So we're going to play Munchkin.
somebody mentioned Werewolf. One Night Ultimate Werewolf is really cool. Plus, there's an app, so you don't even have to memorize the rules. You just hit a button and you play the game. That's a fun one.
Yeah, I've used One Night with parents and their children, and it is interesting to watch it all devolve, and they start blaming each other, and then I'm the werewolf the whole time, and I'm like, okay, now what can we learn from this situation?
Yeah, there's also One Night Alien, One Night Vampire, and don't let the title fool you. Secret Hitler is actually a very nice social deduction game.
Yeah, it really is.
The title is a shame because the game is brilliant, and it's just, come on, dude. Talk to someone in marketing.
No, thank you, Evil. Somebody mentioned that. Great gateway game.
Yeah.
Rory's Story Cubes or Untold. Somebody mentioned that.
Yep.
Forbidden Island.
Oh, yeah, that's always great.
Maze.
Yeah.
All great.
Oh, Amazing Tales is great. Yes.
Yeah. One thing that we've done before in the past too is using Werewolf to teach leadership. We went to a college and we did a presentation there with a bunch of people, young men who are about to become men, coming out of high school. And we're teaching how to be a good leader by having them play werewolf. And that was the most, that was a very interesting experience. And I'm sure Brian could touch on that more.
Yeah, it was, we weren't allowed to play though, right? Like we were facilitating.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, there was that aspect of it. But we put in different roles, like the hoodlum, for example. So it or other alternate win conditions, and watching how people would talk and not talk, or what, just on a personal note, within my family when we play werewolf, it's, oh, you're the quiet one, we have to kill you. And so, well, yeah, that person may be quiet, but does that necessarily mean they're hiding something? Why don't you ask them, to actually help you as opposed to help kill you, things like that. We still would use werewolf. We would still use werewolf one night, and and the idea of, well, you don't know these people, and it's like playing at a con, right? Like, you don't know anyone, you just met them, and now you have to somehow pick up enough social cues to survive long enough to figure out which side you want to win.
And I think it's interesting as well, like, how do you get everyone else that's on your team to listen to you when there's all this chaos?
I think I'll throw my final plug, one that I actually just received this week, but it's incredibly exciting. Scooby-Doo Betrayal at Mystery Mansion. So if you've ever played Betrayal at House on the Hill, it is basically the Scooby Gang playing this game. There's another one called Escape from Mystery Manor that is an escape room experience using the Scooby-Doo gang to collaboratively problem solve. So excellent games. Plus, come on, man, it's Scooby. I mean, how much better could it be? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Any last questions before we go, guys?
Did we want to share like where to go for information? Maybe pop.
Yeah, I have been putting stuff in the chat, but I'll put our information. Mike and did we lose Shawn? I think we lost Shawn.
No, he's here.
Oh, he is here. If you want to,
I'm
put
back,
your
but
stuff.
I got nothing to plug, guys. You're all right.
Yeah, we'll put our stuff in the chat if you guys are interested in what we're doing and anything else, as in our blog, Therapeutic by Design. You can find that at therapyandplay.com. Jack will be writing. Well, he's written already. It'll be coming out soon. What was your post on, Jack?
Oh, the post will be on the therapeutic underpinnings of player archetypes. So if you're like a power gamer or, you know, the actor or whatever, we use these stereotypes sometimes to design our sessions, but there are, as with any other behavior, nothing ever happens just cause. So there's reasons why people power game. There's reasons why people interrupt sessions on a consistent basis. So it's an article about player archetypes, positive or negative, and how we can examine them therapeutically, because again, it's always the reason we do things, not just the things that we do.
And we will have everything at therapyandplay.com. We'll have the recording up. Hopefully next week we'll have that up. And we'll also have it up on YouTube, this whole thing. So if you're interested, it'll be there. You can find out all the information that we've done there.
And we do have a Facebook, which will probably have information on there up first.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and all of our social medias are Therapy and Play, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and yeah, I think that's everything.
Yeah, all things I never checked, so it's okay.
Yep. Yeah, and if anyone wanted to reach out, I mean, there are trainings, consultations available. We do have a small primer called Wizards, Warriors, and Wellness that you can get off of DriveThruRPG that talks about therapeutic role-playing, and I know that there's a lot more excellent coming down the pike. So, I mean, I would say you all have been a phenomenal audience, and apparently
Thank you so much.
we had a lot of Canada with us today. I didn't realize that until I read the chat.
Shawn has a big
Shawn.
car. Yeah, Shawn's car is really big.
It was the countryside. Everyone knew it was Canada.
Yeah, Shawn's like, this is my network. You know.
I wish I got a signal down by the bay. You guys would be amazed.
Oh,
It looks
yeah.
otherworldly.
Oh,
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you,
yeah.
everyone. Thank you for coming. Tomorrow you could see us on Jack's panel, which is at 1 o'clock. And then, correct, 1 o'clock?
yeah, 1 o'clock ASD at your FLGS.
Yep. And then we have our panel, which will be about kids on bikes, kids and therapists on bikes, where we'll be talking the therapeutic uses of kids on bikes at 3 o'clock. And
who's moderating that panel for us, Tim?
Oh, Doug Levinowski, one of the co-creators of Kids on Bikes, will be moderating that. Mm-hmm. And then on Sunday, we have a panel on hope and resiliency with Shawn and Menachem Cohen, who is a rabbi who uses D&D for spiritual guidance.
Yeah, Menachem's an excellent speaker as well. It's great panels so far this year. They've been phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone for coming out, and Thank you guys for joining us today.
Yeah, seriously, thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Guys,
Blast.
Sean, great seeing you
nice
again.
seeing your faces. Yeah, it's good
Yeah.
seeing y'all.